Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The plenary session is about to begin. Please find your seats. Thank you. حضورنا الكرام، نود تذكيركم بأن اللغة الرسمية للمؤتمر هي اللغة الإنجليزية. يمكنكم الاستماع للترجمة الفورية عبر الأجهزة المخصصة لذلك. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. It brings me absolute pleasure to stand here in front of you all on the fourth day of the IAEE International Conference in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I must say, what a week. I'm your MC, Rana Al-Hanaya. Your safety matters to us, of course, so kindly keep these simple directions in mind. We are not planning any drills, but should an incident occur, the fire exits are located on both sides of the hall. You've got one over there and one over here. As a courtesy, please set your mobile phones to silent during the session. Remember that this conference is about observation and immersing yourself into the experience. And of course, have a good time. There will be time allocated for questions towards the end. Please submit them by scanning the QR code on the screen that will be shown at the time. We also would like to remind you that there are 3 Wi-Fi networks, named 1, 2, and 3 with the conference name. All you need to do to connect is to add the password, which is exactly the same as the network name. So you only need to copy-paste that, and that will be your password. There's also an app available with all the details for the conference, so don't miss that. That is it for housekeeping, and now without further ado, let us start the session. Our moderator for this session has over 23 years of experience in the energy industry. He recently held senior management roles at Energy Intelligence from Vortexa and Genscape. He currently holds the position of Director of Global Oil Service in Rapidan Energy Group. Ladies and gentlemen, Clay Siegel. Clay, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Clay. I'm from Rapidan Energy Group, and it is my honor to moderate this session. I think it will be a very exciting panel and plenary session on the topic of energy efficiency and industrial competitiveness. I'm also a member of the United States Association for Energy Economics, and I'm very happy to be here with you in the Kingdom this week. Well, energy efficiency is really one of the most interesting and I think impactful elements of our common agenda. To a great extent, it defines demand for all of the primary energy sources. And as I think we'll see in our discussion, it's also very relevant on the supply side, particularly as we emphasize the importance of circularity in the planning and operation of energy assets. Now, I don't want you all to worry when I tell you this next information, but I am just an oil market analyst. I am not a specialist in the field of energy efficiency, but the great news is we fortunately have a panel today of outstanding contributors who are very well qualified to lead this insightful discussion about the state of play in energy efficiency, the lessons already learned over the years, and the opportunities for progress in the years to come. So I will welcome each one of our panelists on stage before we begin with the keynote presentation. We're especially privileged to be joined today by His Highness Prince Sultan bin Khalid Al-Saud, the Chief Executive Officer of the Saudi Industrial Development Fund. Your Highness, welcome. Please join me here on stage. Any seat you select. Next, let's welcome Professor Ricardo Raineri, Economic Advisor at Associated Universities, Inc., and previously served as the Energy Minister of Chile. Professor, please join us up here on stage. Welcome. Our next speaker is Mr. Nasser Al-Ghamdi, Director General of the Saudi Energy Efficiency Center. Sir, please join us up on stage. Welcome. Our next contributor is Mr. Tatsuya Terazawa. He's Chairman and CEO of the Institute of Energy Economics, Japan. Mr. Terazawa, welcome. And finally, let me welcome to the stage and introduce Dr. Fahad Al-Sherehy. He is the Vice President for Energy Efficiency and Carbon Management at SABIC. Dr. Sherehy has kindly volunteered to serve as keynote speaker for our plenary session. He will set the scene for our dialogue with the keynote presentation on energy efficiency and industrial competitiveness, doing more with less. Dr. Fahad, the floor and the podium are yours. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Clay. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Let me first thank CAPSARC for giving me this opportunity to participate today and share with you the importance of energy efficiency for our industry, and especially when it comes to the decarbonization of our industry, how and what is the importance of the energy efficiency. Now, if you ask first, why we are doing it? What is the driver for doing it? There are some strategic drivers. We believe it is driving the industry and our business in general to do. One, which is very important, is about the technology disruption. And as you can appreciate, there are many industry or landscape of our industry will be impacted big time by any technology transformation, which could change the industry. It could take some people even out of the industry or the business if they are not ready for the transformation. Second is about the global regulations. And as you can see today, it's increasing pressure everywhere. There are many countries already now announced the carbon neutrality. We see in Saudi Arabia during the Saudi Green Initiative announced 2060. US, Europe, they are in the lead, and they are trying even to advance the carbon neutrality plan. Two big populations like India and China, they already announced even their carbon neutrality. So this is a kind of a pressure globally, and especially for global company where they have global footprint. This is a key driver need to take care of it. Also, we are seeing even from our customer. The customer now, they are demanding and they are asking for the material or solution buying from you. What is the carbon footprint? And they need more information how this is friendly to the environment. Also, when it comes to the investors and the investor expectation, there's now increasing pressure, and you see now ESG becoming one of the key elements for evaluation some of the funds as well as the opportunity. So investor and allocating funds for some industry, it will be challenged if it is not environmentally friendly. Last, which is also the demand from the entire stakeholder. We are talking about transparency and disclosure. So today it is not enough for you to announce your financial statements. Now they are demanding and more to see while you are doing business, how you are impacting the society, how you are impacting the environment. So this is a key strategic driver for any industry or any business, creating a momentum for the action to be taken. The good news here that we see, and personally I consider circular carbon economy, which is adopted by Saudi Arabia, to me is the right platform to address the climate change. For a very simple reason, it is balanced, it is considering all the options, and there is no favorism or bias to any track, take into consideration the different company or even country situation, because not every region or every company, they have access to infrastructure, even affordability. So it create the right platform or a balanced platform for addressing the climate change. And one of the key pillars, and this is already established very well, is when it comes to the first R, which is the reduce, energy efficiency play a major role when it comes to the circular carbon economy. How it is important to our industry. And as you can see from this graph, I mean, as a comparison or a very simple comparison with and without energy efficiency. But is it enough, the energy efficiency, to address the entire climate change or addressing the CO2 emissions? It's not, but it needs very clear momentum as well as speed. Some people also, they are seeing the energy efficiency as will address very well the short term. And it will be, some people, they say this is the easy to do and more difficult to do. For example, you need a disruption or you need a technology transformation. So energy efficiency will be helpful, at least in the short run, but you need more to address or to do the real transformation. Now, sharing with you SABIC, or what we are doing in SABIC. The good news here, SABIC is, since the establishment in the 76, it's established based on a sustainability story. As many of you know, that the flared gas at that time collected and converted to valuable product, which makes SABIC. Now, since that time, environment as well as sustainability become a key pillar or a foundation pillar for our strategy as well as for our growth. We started the sustainability program as an official program since 2010, which is helping us being proactive and also being ready for the challenge to come. So the sustainability, it comes with some changes across the organization, drive, become also the report, setting voluntary target for the sustainability to achieve the key element of the sustainability, which come the energy, the water, the waste, and as well as the material. So this is helping us and creating a drive from the beginning for us. And during 2021 and during the Saudi Green Initiative, SABIC announced, and this is helping us to announce our carbon neutrality target globally, addressing scope 1 and 2 by 2050. And also we put a target for ourselves, which is the 2030 to have a 20% reduction. This is now for scope 1 and 2. Of course, for scope 3, we'll work with the entire value chain and trying to improve as well as working across the value chain to create the value. For us, it is something that's also very important to address here, that for us in SABIC, looking at the sustainability from two aspects. One, as where we are operating and how we are operating and what the impact that we create in the environment and how we reduce it, how we become sustainable, but at the same time, with the material and the solution that we are producing, this is something also to help our customer industry as well as the society. So we are addressing it from both, from where we are operating, but at the same time with the material and solution that we are providing. This is, you can say, the overall model for SABIC, or the circular carbon economy. As I said to you, that this is addressing all the 4 R's, and which is one, which is about the energy, but also when it comes to even the plastic recycling, which is one of the key elements that we are considering and addressing when I say that providing the solution and providing materials for our customer. If you see our carbon neutrality roadmap, and this is the contribution, biggest contribution come from reliability, process efficiency, as well as energy efficiency. And this is what I said, this is something related to the short term and our investment in that direction. Also, I want to also to give the credit to KSA government establishing the energy efficiency program, or the SEEC. This is something also creating on the industry is to start act early, which is started, I believe, in 2011. This is creating a momentum to act and to improve our efficiency, working together with them, which is based, I mean, the target that they are setting for us. It is a challenging, but it's also considering or based on industry benchmark. And if you see the rest of the carbon neutrality elements, I will just only focusing on the energy efficiency because of the topic of today's session. Energy efficiency, it is not something that you take it light. It needs fundamental changes or transformation even within the organization, which is a lot of effort need to take. First one is addressing people and organization. We're establishing a program for energy efficiency or carbon management, also having the people and the talent, including the certification, internal certification, and program competency to develop to ensure that this is a program sustainable. It's a continuous, because it's a journey. It's not something that you will do. It's a project that you will finish and you forget about it. No, will continue with you. Second is about the business performance and how we are doing, putting it part of our KPIs. Even the individual incentives, especially the leaders, it is part of it, how we are doing and what we are achieving globally. The last, which is about the standards, which is about the plan, audit, making sure the data that you are providing and you are measuring is accredited internally, making sure that before providing the data it's accurate and representing your performance. And this is the results. If you see the energy efficiency, as I said, which started in 2011, you see the progress. We are able to close the first cycle. Now we are starting the new challenges to the second cycle. And if you see the investment, we've invested in the first cycle more than $1 billion, and we are spending more than $1.3 billion in the second cycle. And we see the value of doing so because this is improving our efficiency. As you can see also in the graph, this is helping us in our carbon footprint and reducing the carbon emission. Alhamdulillah, during the 2021, we achieved 10%, or half of our target, 10%. That achieved in 2021. Doesn't mean that the other half, it will be easy, it will be even more challenging, because what we are getting is the, you can say, the low-hanging fruit. I want to have a summary of the, or I can say that this is some of the thoughts that I want to share with you. As you can see, energy efficiency is a key enabler for decarbonization. This is something very important. And don't think about it, the only solution. No, you need other solutions you need to take into consideration. Technology and also cost-effective solution. Deployment, this is something very important. You cannot rely in a soft solution or easy-to-do solution. You need some disruption in the technology. This will help you in the long run. Digitalization, and here is something very important, is about the accuracy of the data, about availability of the data to make a decision. So digitalization is something very important and need to be investing on. Regulation support, regulator support. This is something also needed. Understanding the challenge of the industry, the right incentives or the right support or enabler, as well as the infrastructure, it will help big time. Like, for example, what happened in Saudi Arabia, announcing the energy mix improvement, which is 50% renewable, 50% with the other sources. This is something very helpful in improving the energy intensity in Saudi Arabia, and this is helping us also. Collaboration across the value chain. I think collaboration is something very essential in this, because nobody can do it. Not a company, not a country. I think this is one of the best spots when it comes to the collaboration across the value chain. Also, getting access to the fund, because sometimes we are challenged to finance some of the projects to the extent we change the hurdle rate for approving any investment related to the sustainability within SABIC below our normal rate, just only to make sure that we can get approval for some of the project. Now, getting access to funds as well as helping executing some of the challenging, especially for the technology deployment, this is something very important going forward. The last, which is the most important, is you need people to do it. When I'm talking here about human capital, capacity, as well as capability and competency. And this is something very important that need to be addressed to have a sustainable pipeline of talent to help you. So with this, I'd like to thank you and give time more for the question and dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sherehy, for this informative and insightful overview of the energy efficiency achievements at SABIC, particularly the energy intensity reduction performance that's been achieved in recent years. This presentation sets a strong foundation for our discussion about energy efficiency. So with that, let's begin our discussion with a simple question to establish a common understanding at the highest level, which is, in your perspective, why are we prioritizing energy efficiency improvements? And from this lens that each of you can contribute your perspective, we then have a solid grounding to analyze some of the results and talk about the objectives for the future. So yeah, the first question, just very basic. What is the reason for prioritizing energy efficiency improvements? Anyone is available who has comments on this one? We can start with Mr. Terazawa, to my right.
Yeah, Japan, I'm coming from Japan. Japan has been dealing with energy efficiency since 1973, when we faced the first energy oil crisis. So there's much that we can talk about. However, energy efficiency is considered to be, by many people, not as sexy as renewable energies. You can see the tall towers of wind power generation, and you are impressed. But for energy efficiency, most of them, you cannot see them. And that's the reason why people do not pay so much attention to energy efficiency. But the reality is that energy efficiency has so much importance and potential. Our institute, IEJ, has conducted a long-term outlook, drawing a path for the 2050. Speak closer. And according to our analysis, energy efficiency can and should play as important a role as renewable energies. There are three benefits for energy efficiency. One is the cost. Doing the marginal abatement cost analysis. How much cost is required to reduce CO2? In many cases, energy efficiency measures come less expensive than many supply-side measures. And some of them come with negative marginal abatement costs. Can you imagine being negative? One of the easy examples is change the temperature of your air conditioner. It doesn't cost you a lot, but it lowers your energy bill. And that's the simple example that energy efficiency can be very cheap in many cases. My story, I visited the COP27 meeting in November in Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh. People were discussing how we can resolve this global climate issue. But for us, we were freezing in the cold temperature. Before talking, they could a little bit adjust the temperature, a little bit, and they could have immediate results to the global climate. And this is one of the beauty of energy efficiency. You can do it right away, and it's cost effective. And this is very important today as we face the energy crisis and people feel the price hike. Through energy efficiency, they can reduce the energy consumption and lower their energy bill. And this is very important for the emerging and developing countries. Because of their strong economic growth and rising living standard, their energy demand is bound to grow. And many of them do not have the best resourceful economic means. So they have to strengthen energy efficiency. So the cost is the first advantage or benefit. The second is the speed. Most energy efficiency related technologies are already available. We don't have to wait for years for R&D. We don't have to wait for a series of demonstration projects. We can do it right away. And compare with many supply side measures like wind power generation, you don't need the permits and you don't need the long period of construction. You can do it right away. And as we face the energy crisis, global climate crisis, and the accumulation of CO2 does matter, it's better to reduce CO2 right away. So that's the second benefit of energy efficiency. The third one relates to Japan, an energy importing country. If, from Japan's perspective, if we can enhance energy efficiency, we can reduce the import of energy we buy. This may be bad for Saudi Arabia, I'm sorry, but it helps us. And having energy efficiency is a de facto indigenous energy. The more we enhance our energy efficiency, it's like having another oil field in Saudi Arabia. So energy efficiency is cost effective, it is fast, and it enhances the energy security. Today, throughout this conference, we have been talking about the trilemma. It's difficult, but energy efficiency relates to all three. It's good for the environment, it enhances affordability, and it enhances energy security. And this is a reason why we should highlight energy efficiency. And I'm talking from our experience of 50 years of struggling with energy efficiency. It's hard, but it's worth pursuing.
Thank you, Mr. Terazawa. Very interesting perspective that comes from a consuming country lens. Appreciate that. Who else on the panel would like to weigh in on this one? Please.
Well,
Speak closer.
Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be part of this event and, of course, to share this panel with my esteemed colleagues. Well, I tend to agree with what Mr. Tsoye mentioned, but I'll give it a different perspective. A country that's recently adopted energy efficiency 10 years ago. I mean, globally, energy efficiency has been always in the epicenter of major energy strategies and policies globally, especially in the developed economies. And why is that? For a simple question, and this is the point of agreement with Mr. Tsoye, because it's the most cost-effective option to address the rising energy intensity or rising energy consumption, which will translate into GHG reduction return. To give a bit of context specific for the kingdom, over the past couple of decades, we've enjoyed a long period of economic and population growth, which came at a price of unprecedented energy, rise in energy consumption. And in the face of this challenging imperative over the past years, I would say 10 years, since the establishment of this, or since we embarked on this energy efficiency journey, we've seen the effective result. And to give another perspective of producing countries rather than importing countries, if you look at the, obviously we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we want to continue from other stops. Heating issue in Japan is cooling here in Saudi Arabia. So in a nutshell, the approach or the way we're addressing energy efficiency is quite similar when it comes to regulation, be it standards, be it labels, be it etc. The technical support, the technological advancement, the funding. So it's an effective toolkit that is applicable across the board, irrespective of you're a producer or not. Of course, minding the inherent differences between nations, but it has been serving us well over the past 10 years. We just started, the journey is still ongoing, and we have a clear roadmap to achieve what we aspire on that front. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Yes, Your Highness, please.
Thank you. I'd first like to begin by thanking the organizers, CAPSARC, for having us here today. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. maybe just to elaborate more, or maybe just to even before that, so if we look at whatever net zero commitments, targets there are, right? All are ambitious, all are quite challenging, but key aspect of energy efficiency, and in any scenario, the underlying assumption is the gains from energy efficiency are front-loaded because of the affordability, because of the availability. Yet, we're quite far away, as we've seen from my colleague at SABIC's presentation, where the requirement is around 4%, we're 2 to 3x short of that today. Now, whether that is actually an achievable target depends not only on the usability of the current, at least in the industrial sector, the current available scope of technologies. We will gain tremendous benefits from there, but it also requires a forward-looking view in terms of investments in technology. Now, the reality of the current dialogue is it is hindering quite a bit of these investments as you look into the future, and volatility in the forward picture, whether the materials of today, the processes of today, the plants of today will be the plants of the future. And so a recognition of the fact of what gets us there has to also be consistent with our allocation of capital in research and development to ensure the availability of technology for future use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, this is a fantastic point that...
Yeah, let me comment.
Oh, another comment, sure, please.
No,
Professor.
His Excellency, ladies, gentlemen, thank you for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here, commenting on such important issue. Yes, I want to add a little bit on what the Prince has just said, and also your presentation. I would say that why we care about energy efficiency, because I think it's healthy. It's healthy in all sense. It's like going to the gym. It puts you in a diet that makes you stronger, more competitive, if we are thinking in terms of an industry. Industries that, or companies that take energy efficiency seriously gain important competitive advantage against other companies. And the presentation we see is a very nice and well-crafted energy efficiency on energy management program in line, I would say, with the ISO 50001. Okay, so I think that is very important. In terms of energy importing, energy exporting countries, I don't see much difference in terms of the relevance of energy efficiency. The problem is the same, but the benefits can be a little bit different. In the case of an energy importing country, certainly energy efficiency reduces the bill of imports, put you less exposed to international shocks on the energy markets. And for an energy exporting country, certainly if you become more energy efficient, well, you will have more energy that you can export, and you will have more resources to invest in different activities. So I think it's a good equation. In general, as you mentioned, His Excellency, well, there's a long-hanging fruit. It's the technologies that are available today. I think that there is no one-size-fits-all. We have different solutions. In general, in the commercial sector, at the household level, energy efficiency follows similar path in terms of improving the efficiency of the appliance, improving lighting, heating, having construction codes to make homes more efficient. But once we go into the industry, and some industries are very complex, certainly we need to start looking more closely what are the measures or what technologies are available, if they are available, to enhance energy efficiency. And there comes innovation that is key. In terms of the projection that we have seen, or what is required to this carbon neutrality in 2050, where energy efficiency has a huge role, we haven't seen in the past the level of investment on energy efficiency that are required to achieve what those projections demand. I think those projections are a good roadmap on the ambition, but we need also to have a projection that is more attached with the reality, what we can do today, and what technologies we have today, and where we can go with what we have today. So in that sense, I think additional work should be done in terms of being more transparent of what is possible, what capital is available, and where we are going, because sometimes we have, with mitigation, we have also to work on the adaptation of the issues of climate change.
Thank you, Professor Raineri. So if I understand you correctly, we can work on energy efficiency instead of going to the gym. I like this plan. I think I'm going to adopt this as my own. I'd like to follow up on an excellent point that His Highness Prince Sultan made about the way we measure success and the targets that are set for measuring energy efficiency and changes. So the International Energy Agency estimates annual energy intensity improvements reached 2% last year in 2022. That's a big improvement from the pandemic years, to be sure. It was close to 0.5% during 20 and 21, but 2% is still pretty far behind the 4% figure, this is annually, that's needed throughout this decade to match the objectives of the net zero scenario. So I'd like to ask the panelists that would like to comment on this one, in your work to address and study energy efficiency, what does success look like? And how should we measure it? Who would like to? Mr. Terazawa, please.
Well, let me put that 4% annual improvement figure in context. I have some data. The global improvement in energy efficiency between 2017 and 2020 was 1.3%. That was for the 4 years or 5 years. And as I said, Japan, facing the first energy crisis in 1973, engaged in a massive energy efficiency efforts. And we were able to improve our energy efficiency by 35% between 1973 and 1990. 35% seems to be great, but on an annual level, it's about 2% annually, facing the crisis. And also, we had the great earthquake and the Fukushima nuclear accident in 2011. And that's another crisis we had. And all the nuclear power plants were closed. And in the response, we had to have demand-side measures because the supply-side measures were not available in time. And we engaged in a massive demand-side efforts as well. And what we achieved was that between 2010 and 2020, in about 10 years, we improved our energy efficiency by 20%. That's impressive. But on an annual basis, it's about like 2% per year. So that's the reason why even a 2% improvement every year for a long period of time is a very significant achievement. In fact, based on our IEJ's long-term outlook, we attach our assumption is a 2.1% annual improvement in energy efficiency between now and 2020. So while 4% is an ambition, but in terms of the reality check, achieving 2% every year throughout the period in itself is an achievement. But it is short of 4%. Does it mean that we should not try? We should try more. I'm giving my expectation as of now, 2%, but we should do more. And this difference between 4% and 2% may just appear to be just 2%. But this 2 percentage point difference every year, if you continue to do it for 10 years, I cannot do the complex math, but multiply by 10, so that's 20%. So IEA's net zero emission path towards 2030 in between, has its outlook based on 4% improvement every year. So just assuming that we achieve 20%, which is good enough from my view, but that 2% difference for 10 years will result in a 20% difference. So compared with IEA's outlook as of 2030, the simple arithmetic is that we will have 20% more energy demand. So that would lead to the question, once again, we need to do more to enhance energy efficiency, but the reality is that probably we will fall short of that 4%. And that difference, more demand, will only have to be satisfied by more supply. And that requires more investment upstream. And during the conference here, we have always heard that there needs to be investment for the upstream for fossil fuel. And this is one example, energy efficiency with a gap of 4% and maybe 2%, and even with 3%. That difference for 10 years will result in a difference in demand, which will require more supply and more investment.
That's a great finding and a great implication of our analysis here today. The implication for the upstream requirement and energy supply, even if what many would think are realistic objectives of those annual and compound changes are achieved. Thank you for that. I would want to, actually, first of all, housekeeping. You are all encouraged to submit your questions to us here on the panel by using the QR code with your phone camera, and we will get to audience questions later in the session. If there are no other comments, I'd like to ask the panel if other participants have input on this assessment of what success looks like, and then maybe we can focus a bit more on the situation here in the kingdom. Any other? Please, Dr. Sherehy.
Yeah, I think looking at the energy efficiency as a journey, and as we are assuming that our demand for energy is where we are today. There's a growth in population, and there is a growth in demand. So there will be growth in energy. So this will even the challenge, and the requirement for the energy efficiency will be more if you want to have a sustainable and secure the energy on the long run. So it is just going beyond the current demand. And if you see the figure, how much the investment required for the energy in the coming years, we are talking about trillions, not billions, but trillions. So I think without energy efficiency as a key enabler, I mean, going forward is something very important. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is, in my opinion, there are energy efficiency, low-hanging fruits, which is a kind of a soft, as you say, that this can be done. However, there are things which require innovation, which require the step change in the technology to help to get the 4% as you mentioned. So, in my opinion, this is a journey which required that, for example, looking for the investment going forward. And if you see even the decarbonization, we are talking about trillions to reach the decarbonization of the industry. One important aspect maybe, although it is not part of the industry, but energy efficiency is required for all the sectors, because not the industry is the only consumer of energy. There are the transportation, there are also the buildings, etc. So also the other sectors, it is as important as the industry when it comes to the energy efficiency. And maybe Nasser, he's known this in our energy efficiency, the center, they are looking for all the sector, not only the industry.
Excellent point. Thank you, Dr. Fahad. And building on your introductory presentation, the keynote presentation that highlighted the achievements specifically at SABIC, I would like to ask Mr. Ghamdi to describe a little bit about the state of play of energy efficiency generally here in the kingdom. I mean, we have focus on outside of transportation, certainly in energy world, on cooling, on building insulation systems, on water desalination technologies. What are the big initiatives here in the kingdom that we're most enthusiastic about?
Thanks, Clay. I'm quite biased because I'm not going to highlight only the big ones. I was privileged to be part of the founding team members of the energy efficiency program 10 years ago. But if you look at what has been done so far, I mean, rightfully, like what Mr. Fahad mentioned, Dr. Fahad mentioned earlier, the scope of our energy efficiency in the kingdom is beyond the industry. It's the biggest consuming sector, but like any other countries, the building and transportation represent a significant amount as well. I mean, for multiple initiatives in transportation that spans from rolling tire resistance for tires, the corporate average fuel economy, which resulted around 3% of improvement in annual basis for the past 6 years. Same goes with building. Nearly 30 standards and regulations have been developed and shaped, and even in a dedicated chapter within our building code for conservation and efficiency. Not only that, we've started even to tap into to stimulate the full potential of the savings in the building sector. We've launched a couple of incentive scheme or incentive programs targeting air conditioners, obviously because cooling represents more than 50% of the energy consumed domestically. One program to stimulate the high efficient ACs purchase, and the other one is currently in the pilot phase to replace old and inefficient ACs. We've established a dedicated company following the Super ESCO model with the objective of retrofitting all public buildings. We're talking about more than 200,000 buildings. And the objective, of course, to build a thriving ESCO sector within the kingdom. Today, Tershid, which is in a company that was a result of collaboration between us and the Public Investment Fund, is targeting nearly 3,600 million street lights, around 200,000 buildings to be retrofitted, public buildings. Additionally, an industry which is quite relevant to most of the audience here. 10 years ago, we started the energy framework for industrial plants with the objective of putting some sort of energy efficiency requirement to drive the most consuming subsector, cement, steel, petrochemical, and aluminum, to reach or achieve certain aspirational target. It's been a journey, and I mean, in this specific business model or policy, and even across other policies, what we've done is, I would say, there are 3 key takeaways that helped us build a pragmatic policy or standard or regulation or any endeavor we worked on over the past 10 years. I would say the first one is, while it's important to have a strategic direction, to know where we want to reach, but it's equally important to start and follow a bottom-up approach and build a thorough fact base to come up with something that is ambitious, but at the same time achievable. And this goes back to the 4% and 2% point that was raised by my esteemed colleagues earlier. Another, I would say, key success factor was the bringing everyone together. You cannot develop a policy behind the doors without engaging with all stakeholders from day one, be it private sector, industry plants, regulators, end user, consumers, etc. And I believe bringing everyone together and opened our eyes about some mechanics that are not clear without having that one table setting where everything is cleared and the implementation is cleared and the requirement is clear, to have and also to have the local context of your policy as well. And this resulted accountability, buy-in, consensus, and of course the ultimate achievement of the objective, be it industry or other sector. And last but not least is in energy efficiency, we truly believe that every little bit counts. As my colleague rightfully mentioned, as simple as setting the temperature, cleaning your AC filter, doing some housekeeping will you'll be reaping the benefit. So every little bit counts, and we truly believe that today's wastage is tomorrow's shortage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Ghamdi. Here in Saudi Arabia, the industrial sector is the largest source of CO2 emissions from fuel combustion. I believe it's nearly half of the total. Now, the Saudi Industrial Development Fund has a program called Pontificia with an energy efficiency component for qualified projects. Prince Sultan, could you please describe what this program hopes to achieve for energy efficiency in Saudi industry, and are there some results to share so far, please?
Sure, thank you for the question. I think before I get to that, we've spoken about what potentially success looks like. I think it's equally important to address what it takes and put that in the perspective of what SIDF is doing as well. So I think what it takes, there is certainly a role for governments to play. There's certainly a role for private sectors to play, and there's most certainly a role for funding institutions and development finance institutions to play to incentivize the right behaviors, the right investments. And I think Pontificia is SIDF's particular offering to encourage the private sector players, whether it's the SABICs, even the smaller players, to invest in energy efficiency, but also to invest in automation and digitization. And I think both are interlinked. We usually speak about them differently, but if we think about it from a resource productivity perspective, even capturing and realizing a lot of the energy efficiency gains that result from more efficient equipment and whatsoever is also related to getting your physical assets connected. Right? It's about process, it's about performance, and it's about the efficiency of those performance. So Pontificia is a funding offering. So we fund the private sector for undertaking any energy efficiency or digitization projects or upgrades. And it goes up to 20 years, and when we cover up to 75% of the project cost. Recently launched, obviously, as part of SIDF's revamped strategy. We've supported projects close to $1 billion now. That for us is not ambitious enough, nor is it close to where we believe success looks like. So, and we expect to remain net lenders to this particular program for the foreseeable future, and hopefully for it to be accelerated in the recent coming years. Also, the program in particular is developed and consistent with the national strategies and strategic objectives, whether those are related to the Ministry of Energy, the center, and we look at it as well from a solution perspective. So we don't only wait for clients to come and offer our projects, but these are also marketed by solution providers. So we sell whole solutions. So we have 13 or 14 solution providers who have obviously signed agreements with the SIDF. These are the Siemens, the GEs, the Honeywells, and the likes. And so when they offer their services, which begin with energy audits to the solutions, they also offer a funding solution that's provided by the fund. And that's how we plan to take it to market, and that's how we plan to contribute to the kingdom delivering on its objectives and hopefully succeed in those.
Thank you, Prince Sultan. Please.
And I mean, just to add on Prince Sultan's point, this just gives you the beauty of how synergies are being conducted within even the different government sectors. By offering or requiring energy audits and through licensed and certified energy auditors or ESCO companies or industrial assessment consultant by the Saudi Energy Efficiency Center, the government now is orchestrated and works in harmony in how to enable each other objective with a common objective. And I mean, this is a good example that I missed, but I'm glad that Prince Sultan highlighted that, which helped us a lot. And we noticed that even in the industry sector and the application that for the companies to provide those services.
Thank you. Professor Raineri.
No, I want to comment first, when we talk about how we measure energy efficiency, and we are looking at it as energy intensity, it's something that makes me to think a little about what is behind energy intensity. What we see behind energy intensity many times is the industrial structure of a country, and that is changing, is evolving. Okay, so using that as a measure of energy efficiency can be very misleading. If we think in the mining industry, the mine is a live agent. The ore grade is changing all the time. We think in Chile, you have to go deeper and deeper. You can do it much more efficiently, but if we measure it as energy intensity, you will get will be in the red line. So it's an issue that we have to look carefully how we measure energy efficiency. On the Chilean story of how we got involved in energy efficiency, well, we are more on the Saudi Arabia side, not in Japan that has, and the US that have a long history of energy efficiency experience. We started in 2005 with an energy efficiency program with some target, trying to measure, to learn, build capacity. In 2010, we created the National Energy Efficiency Agency that depends from the energy minister. That agency today is called Sustainability Agency. And in 2021, we created, we approved an energy efficiency law. Energy efficiency law that mandate that large companies, very large companies, have the obligation to have an energy management program to enhance their energy efficiency. So, and on the other side, programs are very similar to the ones that you have commented in terms of energy audit for small companies, supporting, creating new standards, labeling. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Please.
Maybe just highlighting the investment, because not sometimes you find the right solution to invest in. So we established part of the SABIC program, the Internal Energy Credit Program, where our company, they are exchanging the energy credit, which is something very helpful that some plants, which is very old plants, is very difficult, at least for the time being, to fix, versus where you have an affiliate or a company or a plant that with a small investment that you can achieve bigger energy, at least to serve in the short term. So this is something we found it very helpful about exchanging credit between the company internally, where they finance internally the project between each other. Instead of spending, they can spend elsewhere and they get the credit.
I'm just curious, how long ago was this exchange of credits program?
Well, this is in accordance, this is by the support of this is the enabler, the energy efficiency, and now they are allowing even to go and do it beyond your boundary. This is something very helpful in achieving the big the target, rather than just only be bigger impact and overall, rather than just only a very specific. So it goes according to the cycles of the energy efficiency or the Saudi energy efficiency program.
I see. Thank you, sir. Well, I think that we have a point to address the issue of energy subsidies in our conversation about efficiency, especially during the global pandemic downturn. And also in the inflationary environment that has followed, many governments have handed out energy subsidies and reduced fuel taxes. So I guess my question is the desire to help people who are suffering hardships, and it's understood, it's valid, but what effects have we seen on energy efficiency performance from these subsidies and changes to the tax regime? And how should we balance what seem to sometimes be competing prerogatives? Please.
Well, I think we cannot forget the political dimension, the social dimension. Okay. here in the kingdom, the gasoline price is cheap. It's a little bit below international prices. There have been made some reform, increasing gas and natural gas and gasoline prices have been increased. And I was in a concurrent session that they presented the result of those increases and were amazing. How was the impact on energy consumption? So what you saw is they removed some inefficiency that was there. So I think having the right prices is key to promote energy efficiency. You will not do any energy efficiency, or efficiency is something that is very cheap or free. Okay, so you have to feel the pain of what you are buying to take care about that. And in terms of the political dimension, in terms of crisis, as the energy crisis that we are seeing today, the impact that this energy crisis have had in European countries, people is having a pretty bad time. It's understandable that you, from a political point of view, will subsidize that, but certainly this cannot be a permanent issue, so you should have in mind that you have to remove those temporary subsidies in the short term.
Thank you. Johannes.
So, Clay, thank you for the question, because I think it was a good reminder of the fragile state of the world and the people. We tend to focus a lot on the E of the ESG component for good reasons, but a lot of times, especially when we speak about the developing world, we tend to forget the S. But in the entirety of the energy transition conversation, we forget that an energy transition for those in key population centers and ones that are growing, whether that's Africa, whether it's rural India, the energy transition there is very different, right? In a lot of places, the primary source of energy in stoves is still burning wood. Transitioning them to LPG is the energy transition for them. But the S, we can't forget the S. And I think it was an unfortunate reminder, obviously, due to the state of the world and the fragility of it. It happened in the developed world, and we saw, obviously, the response. And we can't anchor on the realities that we have today as well. We also have to take into account, for this to be successful and for us to deliver on a decarbonization achievement and goal, this cannot neglect the S, and it also cannot be ideologically driven. It will not be a single source of energy, it will be multiple. It will not be a single set of solutions, it will be multiple.
Thank you, Prince Sultan. Mr. Terazawa, you've researched this and you have some ideas about the cost of subsidies?
Yeah. I used to work for the Japanese government, but I'm out of the government, so my views will not represent the Japanese government for sure. One of our lessons is that after we faced the first oil crisis in 1973, the biggest reason why our industry engaged in energy efficiency was the rise in the cost. The price of oil jumped by 4 times at the time. So in order for the Japanese industries to stay competitive, they had to strengthen their energy efficiency. So the pricing mechanism is probably the strongest driver to realize energy efficiency. So killing the price mechanism by putting into place across-the-board subsidies to nullify the price effect, I think would be counterproductive if we are to pursue energy efficiency. I understand there is a political necessity, but probably taking into account of the political necessity, moderating the extreme rise in the price is okay, but killing the total price increase effect will be counterproductive. And also, if we consider about the low-income households or the small and medium-sized enterprises, which will be hit badly by the price hike, rather than having across-the-board subsidies, it's better to have a targeted, focused subsidies to those most affected sectors. And rather than keeping these kind of energy subsidies for too long, it is better to have a time limit to how long you would have this energy subsidies. But this is my view, but the reality is that the Japanese government put into place 3 trillion yen. To turn into dollars, take 2 digits away, roughly speaking. 3 trillion yen to ensure that the across-the-board costs for power and gasoline were lowered to a reasonable level. On the other hand, we supported investment for energy-saving equipment for the companies, and also, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. And we provided subsidies for offices and households to have insulation for their housing and buildings. But the total amount of budget we are putting into place for those measures is just 1 trillion yen. 1 trillion yen in itself is great, but we are spending 3 trillion yen to lower the across-the-board price, whereas we are spending just 1 trillion yen, 3 to 1, on measures that can have a long-lasting effect to improve our energy efficiency. So this is something probably not just Japan, but many countries are facing. Do we deal with the problem of today, or do we deal with the measures that can help today, but as well as the future? And I think this is an important issue that IAE can tackle.
Thanks, Mr. Terazawa. Is there another comment on this question? Please.
I mean, I will divide the question into 2 parts. The first part is, do we need, in the first place, do we need subsidy? And I mean, from the energy efficiency lens, if we look at, I call it the triangle of energy efficiency. There is the regulation, and there is the awareness, behavioral change dimension. But guess what? Most of the end user will not, some of the end users or the consumers, be it companies or people, might not respond to the first 2, be it regulation or awareness for financial reason. So to complete the addressable, I would say, approach when it, from energy efficiency lens, it's important to consider that. That's the first part. Subsidy is important in the energy efficiency policy or any other sustainable, I would say, policy. The other dimension is how to prioritize those subsidies, because, I mean, typically a lot of people or a lot of programs or agents are competing to access those funds or those subsidies. And putting together the right, I would say, return on investment at a national level, at the end user, considering the social aspect of things is crucial whenever we want to, I would say, pitch for a subsidy program or an incentive scheme that will stimulate certain initiatives or programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ghamdi. Mr. Terazawa.
Just to qualify my comments, subsidies to help companies invest in energy efficient equipment, that is, I think, justifiable. Subsidies to lower the cost of energy to avoid the price mechanism is something that we have to look into carefully. So in terms of energy subsidies, these 2 are very different. Sure. And I'm in support of the subsidies to incentivize companies or households to invest for the future, but subsidies to lower the costs across the board should be done in a very careful manner.
Certainly. And I tend to agree with you, I tend to agree with you because definitely there are other externalities when you opt for the first one. There is employment, there is economic contribution, there is value add beyond the actual, I would say, instant solution or immediate solution for a price hike or affordability.
Thank you. Dr. Sherehy, you have a comment on this one?
I'm saying we need both.
Well, I have one for you. Previously we mentioned the role of the efficiency improvements in energy supply. I think that SABIC has some experience with reducing energy intensity at some of the olefins facilities. And I'm wondering, could you please describe what's worked well and could be scalable and repeatable in the downstream segment, potentially in other parts of the world, in other countries?
Sure. I think this is mainly technology driven. So there are some soft changes, like through optimization and some changing hardware. And the hardware could be something very simple or something major that need to be changed. And this would depend how old your assets and how old your equipment. Because one important element which is specific, for example, in KSA, that many of the plants built at a time where energy efficiency is not a factor. And even the prices or the competitive prices of the energy at that time is not very important when it was built. So this is creating some kind of deficiency at that time. Now it is any plant that's built, this is almost matching the quartile one. So leaving, you can say, marginal opportunity for improving the efficiency. So the way that I see it, there are some simulation, there are some optimization tools help when it comes to specifically for the cracker. There are some technology that adapted or hardware can be installed by debottlenecking that help a lot. One important element which is hitting also the energy efficiency is the plant reliability, which is the unplanned shutdowns. This is hurting two things. It's not only the energy efficiency and the GHG, but also your productivity as well as your profitability. So addressing also the energy, the plant reliability is something very helpful to sustain your performance, and whatever you achieve, you need to sustain it, if not improving it. So I think it is more of a technology specific, but something that it can be shared and utilized is about the energy system. It's about how you accurately looking at your instruments. Something very simple, which is about the calibration of the equipment. As simple as this, all the way to changing hardware as well as software.
Okay, thank you for describing these elements. We've got several questions here that relate to SMEs, small and medium enterprises, and the approach to energy efficiency in this segment. And I wonder, Professor Raineri, you've seen very large corporations with a very large energy intensity footprint. Do the SMEs deserve a different or separate treatment from these large industrial corporations? Or how do you think about the treatment for SMEs?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I think it's very important. Well, if we think a large corporation, SABIC, they have a lot of engineers, people with a diverse career, so they can manage very well in terms of looking where they can enhance their efficiency. And what you need is the political will of the board to give it as a mandate. Take care about this. And in general, sometimes you even don't need the political will of the board, because it is money that you are wasting. Okay, so if you are a good business manager, you will take care of that. When we go to small, medium enterprises, we face I would say, the market failures that in general justify energy efficiency policies, asymmetric information. Okay, so small companies in general, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the capabilities to make an energy assessment and find where they can make improvements. They face problems in terms of access to capital. So if they have to replace equipment that are cost effective, sometimes they face problems to access to capital. Yeah, so in that sphere is that we see that well-crafted government policies can be very helpful in terms of communicating, in terms of sharing best experience, in terms of supporting these companies eventually with energy assessments. So you subsidize the energy assessment, then you can help them supporting to buy the equipment, So I think it's a different animal, I would say, when we go to small companies, and they deserve a different treatment.
Thank you. Your Highness, the thought from the kingdom's perspective on SMEs. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll give the Saudi context as well. So if you look at the private sector in the kingdom, this is not an exaggeration, this is reality, right? So actually 99% of entities are SMEs. In terms of quantity, right? 1% are your large corporates. So they comprise the significantly largest share. If I would use banking as an analogy, you would treat any solution or any incentive system or anything that you would offer as a channel has to be something that you can offer to retail versus something that's tailored to corporate clients, right? So even if that means dealing with a little bit of slack in the system, actually getting the support there and ensuring that they actually can adopt energy efficient elements, even if it does not give you the highest bang of the buck, is much more effective from an approach perspective. So when we design incentive schemes or we design particular offerings, it is much more, it's much better to optimize for getting the support out there and trust but verify, rather than doing a complete different approach of specific energy audits and all of that, because it will not be sufficient, it's not enough. The second aspect as well is on each single SME, no matter subsidies or without subsidies, the cost burden is not significant enough for them to act, for every single one. Collectively, it's quite substantial. And so I think that has to be taken into perspective as we develop solutions. How do we take them to market, and what things do we incentivize?
Thank you, Prince Sultan. Dr. Fahad.
Yeah, I think maybe for SMEs, and maybe you need to have a different business model where, like for example, the benefit sharing, and this is common in, for example, places like in Europe, where somebody come and invest and share the benefits with you. So this is something that could help that about the affordability of that I cannot afford, but somebody having a solution, come and invest and sharing the benefits. This might be helpful for the small business.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Terazawa, a thought on this?
Yeah. Many people consider Japan as a country of Toyota or large companies, but as all of you have been saying, the economy is run by SMEs for Japan as well. And without being successful for the energy efficiency among SMEs, we will never achieve energy efficiency. In fact, energy efficiency among larger companies have already been achieved substantially. The remaining sector in Japan, one sector, is the SMEs. And what are the challenges for the SMEs? First of all, frankly, they do not necessarily know what to do. So one of the measures we have introduced is send consultants to provide energy audits, to give advice and find areas of waste that can be improved. And some of them do not necessarily require money, but those advice, expertise is extremely beneficial. But some of the actions would require investment, and unfortunately, most SMEs do not have the resources, and that's where subsidies or low interest loans would be very helpful. So the combination of consulting, energy auditing with the financial incentives would be a key to achieve energy efficiency among SMEs.
Thank you. Mr. Al-Ghamdi, please.
Certainly. I mean, if I may add, it's a different perspective. I mean, if you look at SMEs, you know, as individual entities, it's a modest, I would say, consumption. But collectively, like His Highness mentioned earlier, they represent a significant amount. And I think the potential of adopting common practices that will help SMEs. They're not super energy intensive industries in general, I mean. But practices like energy management system, ISO 50001, will build a culture and I'll come to you why it's important. It's not about the culture, but it will not cut my bells, or it will have zero impact on my, I would say, cost structure or operating cost. But if we start with building this culture, and we're planning to do that. As a matter of fact, after the next scope is to cover the next 7,000 industries through energy management system. This is the first step. After that, training the right, I would say, the human capital development that Dr. Fahad highlighted earlier, the last point in his takeaways or summary slide, is another important element. SMEs that provide energy audit and energy solutions or retrofitting services to serve those segments. But this will require instigating the demand and creating a supply and demand as well. And without putting all those blocks into one context, and by the way, this responsibility and accountability lies to us as well, to other government agencies, that will promote or instigate the urgency of having such, I would say, such enabler. Creating this market will serve a new, I would say, sector that will serve that segment, the SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a couple of questions that have come in related to the so-called rebound phenomenon or rebound effect. And I must confess, even though I have a master's degree in economics, I had to study up on this one in order to learn about the phenomenon and the challenge. So rebound effect basically means that once efficiency gains are realized and achieved, there's a tendency to increase usage of energy with sort of the rationalization that it's not so bad or not so costly as before. And I wanted to ask our panelists, are there any specific cases in which the rebound effect undermined an energy efficiency program? And do we have recommendations to mitigate the risk or lessen the effect of the rebound phenomenon? This is for any of our contributors who would like to address it.
Well, let's assume that we are rational. Okay, so if I have a gain in energy efficiency and that makes me available some additional resources, some additional money, eventually I can expand my operations to other areas, or I can increase the size of my company. So I don't think that we can think that there is something negative for this increase of energy after the energy efficiency have been gained.
Okay. And Sultan, please.
So I think the problem is the assumption. Yeah. I think everything that usually starts with assuming we are rational usually does not end up being. That's the unfortunate reality of things. But I think the best tested mechanism, and I think this does not relate to energy efficiency by itself, but the rest of the solutions and the whole discussion around the energy transition. At the end of the day, the best mechanism that has been tested via time to ensure the right behaviors via the right incentives is a market mechanism. It's not efficient, it's not always driven by rational people, but it is the best mechanism. So I think any story around the entirety of the energy transition, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's the sources of energy, whether it's reuse, remove, whatever it is, we have to make a case, and it has to be clear to market participants for why this creates value. If that is not clear, then all great and dandy, but ultimately, we will see reversals. We will see undesired behaviors. So I think clarity there is particularly important. There are ways to go. We are making leaps, absolutely. We are making bets in the kingdom, right? People forget. As they come to the kingdom, we have many validations across the way. We are investing significantly in renewables, wave 1, wave 2 projects. Today, many commencing and operating at world record efficiencies. SIDF, right? We are the largest investor or provider of capital in the form of long-term project finance in green hydrogen, in blue hydrogen, in 2 EV facilities in the kingdom, right? We're not saying neglect everything else. We're actually investing heavily. But at the end of the day, and we're making these bets as well, there has to be clear market mechanisms for these things to work.
Very well said. Thank you, sir. Mr. Terazawa, are you concerned by the rebound phenomenon, or do we?
I agree with His Highness, Prince Sultan, that you have to convince the players about the necessity for energy efficiency. But what we have found, especially for the industrial sectors, is that first, with the energy crisis or oil crisis, they had to do it. But after achieving energy efficiency, what most companies found was that enhancing energy efficiency is lowering their cost, enhancing their competitiveness. So for all the industries, generally speaking, whatever achieved in energy efficiency were kept in place because it was in the best interest of those companies to be cost-effective and being competitive. The bigger challenge would be among the consumers, the households. They do not necessarily face the kind of competition or cost-effectiveness, and that's where we may have the rebound. I talked about the adjustment of temperature for air conditioning. Before the earthquake we had and the nuclear accident in Fukushima, the office temperature was about 26 degrees Celsius for summertime. It was raised to 28 degrees Celsius under the crisis. But after the crisis went away, the temperature went down to 27 degrees Celsius. So it's interesting. 2 degrees Celsius raised during the crisis, 1 degrees down. This is a rebound. But we still have had 1 degree remaining as an improvement. So it's certainly a rebound effect, but there's also a recognition among the industry people that this is good for their competition and maybe even for households. Maybe this is a level which they feel comfortable as well as lowering their bill.
Yeah, but those are preference eventually. Have to do with preference. You like it 28, I like it 26. So.
Well, I think that I've learned as a moderator for plenary sessions to end on an optimistic note. And this last one, that behavior changes can really take hold and become a permanent feature of the landscape, gives me optimism for the future of progressing the energy efficiency initiatives all around the world, not only here in region. So I want to thank my esteemed colleagues for a thoughtful and insightful and informative discussion today. Even though we got through a lot of questions and delivered plenty of answers, I also have the feeling that we're scratching the surface and there's plenty more to come in our IAEE dialogue with regard to energy efficiency. Please join me in thanking our panelists today. Thank you very much.
Your Highness Prince Sultan bin Khalid Al-Saud and the distinguished panelists, thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite you all to join us for the second coffee break, followed by more concurrent sessions. Please find more details on the agenda as well as on the application, and thank you very much for attending.